Florida lawmakers are working to end human trafficking, collaborating with human rights organizations and law enforcement to add protections for victims as well as stricter penalties for offenders. One More Child is spearheading this operation. Recently, sheriff's departments across the state held more than 20 operations, leading to hundreds of arrests and dozens of rescued victims. Florida does have one of the highest counts of human trafficking in the country.
I want people to care about this. I want people to know these are real people. I have grandchildren. There are other Floridians' grandchildren who are being targeted.
One More Child recently raised $150,000 to help fight against human trafficking.